The silence of space shattered as 3,000 alien warships tore through the fabric of reality itself. Their hulls gleamed like black mirrors against the star field, each vessel the size of a mountain and bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. The Zephyrian Empire had arrived at Earth's doorstep, and their fleet stretched across the void like a metallic plague. Admiral Corvin pressed his clawed hands against the viewport of his flagship, the Dread Sovereign. His yellow eyes studied the small blue world spinning peacefully in the distance. In his 800 years of service, he had witnessed the conquest of nearly 1,000 worlds. Each one had followed the same predictable pattern: terror, desperate negotiations, and finally submission. This little planet would be no different. The bridge around him hummed with activity as his officers coordinated the fleet's deployment. Massive dreadnoughts took positions at strategic points around Earth's solar system, while smaller cruisers formed attack wings. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier ships, their engines leaving trails of blue fire against the darkness. "Communications array is ready, Admiral," reported his aide, a young Zephyrian with silver scales covering his neck. "Shall we broadcast the standard ultimatum?" Corvan nodded slowly. "Begin transmission. Let these humans understand their situation." Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, every telescope and radio dish had turned skyward. The alien fleet was impossible to miss. Their ships blocked out entire constellations. In major cities around the world, people gathered in streets and public squares, pointing at the strange lights that had appeared overnight. President Kim Do-yoon rushed through the corridors of the Seoul Crisis Center, his security detail struggling to keep pace. The underground facility buzzed with frantic activity as military officers and government officials tried to comprehend what they were facing. Holographic displays showed real-time images of the alien fleet, the numbers making everyone's blood run cold. 3,000 ships, Defense Minister Park Min-woo announced grimly as he manipulated the 3D projection. "Our entire space navy consists of 200 vessels, and most of those are scientific research ships with minimal weaponry. We have orbital defense platforms around Earth and the Moon, but against this," he gestured helplessly at the display. "Communications." Director Lee Ji-won burst into the room, her face pale. "Mr. President, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Every radio, television, and communication satellite is receiving the same message." The alien transmission filled the room with a voice that sounded like grinding metal. Despite the harsh tones, the universal translator converted the words into perfect Korean. "Inhabitants of the third planet, you have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Lay down your weapons, disband your military forces, and prepare for integration into the Zephyrian Empire. Resistance will result in the complete annihilation of your species and the sterilization of your world. We have conquered 847 civilizations. You will become the 848th. The message repeated in every human language, broadcasting simultaneously across Earth's communication networks. Panic spread through major cities as people realized the gravity of their situation. Stock markets crashed, emergency services were overwhelmed with calls, and world leaders struggled to maintain order. But in a secure facility buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Han Soo-hee remained remarkably calm. She sat in a chair surrounded by banks of quantum computers, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that few humans even knew existed. The room around her contained technology that seemed decades ahead of anything publicly available. Crystalline data cores that pulsed with inner light, walls covered in displays showing star maps of distant galaxies, and communication arrays that could reach across impossible distances. "Initiate Protocol 7, she spoke softly into her headset. "Authorization code, Sleeping Giant. Begin activation sequence for all deep cover assets." Across 17 different star systems, hidden receivers picked up her signal. On worlds that the Zephyrian Empire had conquered decades ago, ordinary-looking beings suddenly stopped their daily routines. A factory worker on the mining planet of Kepler 442b looked up from his assembly line, his eyes now sharp and alert. A merchant selling fruit in the markets of Proxima Centauri b closed her stall and walked purposefully toward a hidden cache of equipment. A maintenance engineer working on a space station orbiting Wolf 359 quietly accessed restricted computer systems. These weren't refugees or survivors of conquest. They were something far more dangerous. They were human agents who had been waiting. In deep cover for exactly this moment, Dr. Han Suhi watched as confirmation signals began appearing on her displays. Green lights flickered to life across a three-dimensional map of the local galactic arm, each one representing an asset coming online. Her network had been decades in the making, seeded throughout the galaxy long before anyone on Earth knew the Zephyrian Empire existed. Phase 1 complete, she whispered. All assets are awake and standing by for orders. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but intelligence analyst Choi Hyun-woo didn't notice. His bloodshot eyes remained fixed on the massive holographic display that filled the war room center. For 3 days straight, he had been swimming through terabytes of intercepted alien communications, searching for patterns in the chaos of their conquest records. The breakthrough came at 3:47 a.m. on the third night. As he overlaid the Zephyrian Empire's conquest timeline with galactic star charts, a chilling pattern emerged from the data streams, floating around him like digital ghosts. "Director Nam, you need to see this immediately," he called out, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Director Nam Yuri entered the analysis chamber alongside the Korean Defense Council's top military minds. The room hummed with the power of quantum processors working overtime to decode alien battle reports, resource inventories, and fleet movements spanning centuries. "Show us what you found," she said, settling into her chair as holographic star maps filled the air around them. Choi Hyun-woo manipulated the display with practiced gestures, highlighting conquered worlds in red. At first glance, their conquests look random, but watch this. The red dots began connecting with golden lines, showing the Empire's actual movement pattern across the galaxy. They're not raiders hitting targets of opportunity. They're following a specific route, harvesting resources and population in a calculated sequence. Colonel Seo Jae-hoon studied the tactical implications. What kind of resources are they taking? Everything, Choi Hyun-woo replied grimly. Rare minerals, advanced technology, but most importantly, people. They conscript entire populations, turning them into slave labor and cannon fodder for their war machine. Each conquered world becomes a factory producing ships, weapons, and soldiers for the next conquest. The hologram shifted to show detailed records from individual planets. Images of massive mining operations, converted cities transformed into weapons factories, and orbital shipyards constructing Zephyrian warships using conscripted alien labor. The efficiency was terrifying. Entire civilizations reduced to resources in the Empire's grand design. Director Nam Yuri felt her blood run cold as she traced the conquest route with her finger. But look at their trajectory after each major conquest. They don't spread out randomly. They're moving in a specific direction. Exactly. Choi Hyun-woo zoomed out to show the galactic view. Every major campaign pushes them closer to the galactic core. Earth isn't their ultimate target. We're just another refueling station on their way to something bigger. The room fell, silent as everyone absorbed this revelation. Defense Minister Park Min-woo leaned forward, his face grave. What could possibly be at the galactic core that would require conquering nearly 1,000 worlds to reach? Before anyone could speculate, Dr. Han Suhi's voice crackled through the secure communication channel from her alpine bunker. Her words carried an authority that made everyone in the room straighten up. "You're asking the wrong question," she said. "It's not what they want at the galactic core. It's what's been waiting for them there." The main display shifted to show deep space monitoring data that most of the Council had never seen before. Streams of information flowed across the screen, signals from monitoring stations positioned throughout the galaxy, data collectors that had been quietly watching and recording for decades. "Our deep space monitoring network has been tracking this particular Zephyrian fleet for 40 years, Dr. Han Suhi continued. "We've intercepted their communications, analyzed their tactics, and studied their conquest patterns since before they even knew Earth existed." Colonel Seo Jae-hoon's military mind immediately grasped the implications. 40 years, but that's impossible. We didn't have interstellar monitoring capability 40 years ago. "Officially, no." Dr. Han Suhi's voice carried a hint of amusement. But our network has been in place much longer than most people realize. And here's the interesting part. Every world the Zephyrian Empire has destroyed sent the same type of final transmission before going dark. New data streams appeared on the display, showing fragments of desperate communications from doomed planets. The Universal Translator worked overtime, converting dozens of alien languages into readable text. Despite the different species and languages, the messages contained eerily similar reports. Look at these final transmissions from conquered worlds. Dr. Han Suhi directed their attention to specific messages. Kepler 438b reported contact with beings from a blue world who knew our defensive capabilities. The Vega colonies mentioned strange visitors who predicted the Empire's attack patterns with impossible accuracy. The Tau Ceti system's last message spoke of mysterious entities from the third planet of a yellow star who seemed to understand our enemies better than we did. The council members exchanged stunned glances. Intelligence analyst Choi Hyunwoo felt pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place in his mind. Every single conquered world reported the same thing, Dr. Han Suhi continued. Contact with beings from a small blue planet, Earth, who appeared to have detailed knowledge about the Zephyrian Empire's methods, weaknesses, and future plans. Director Nam Yuri stood up slowly, her mind racing. Are you saying that humans have been present on all these worlds before their conquest? Not just present. Dr. Han Suhi's voice grew quiet, almost reverent. We've been preparing. Admiral, Corvin expected many things from the primitive species below. Desperate pleas for mercy, frantic offers of tribute, or perhaps defiant speeches about freedom and honor. What he did not expect was Ambassador Jung Minsu appearing simultaneously on every communication channel throughout the Zephyrian fleet. The human diplomat sat calmly in what appeared to be a simple office, wearing a dark suit, with no military decorations or symbols of power. His hands were folded on a plain wooden desk, and his expression showed the kind of quiet confidence that made seasoned warriors uneasy. You have 24 hours to leave this system. This is your only warning. The transmission cut off after exactly 15 seconds. No threats, no explanations, no desperate bargaining. Just a simple statement delivered with the same tone one might use to discuss the weather. On the flagship's bridge, Commander Vextar's scaled face twisted in confusion. Admiral, this makes no tactical sense. Their military consists of research vessels and orbital platforms. They have no hidden fleet signatures, no unusual energy readings from their planet's surface. Admiral Corvin studied the tactical displays showing Earth's pathetic defenses. 200 small ships, mostly scientific vessels with minimal weaponry. A few orbital defense platforms that wouldn't last minutes against a single Zephyrian cruiser. The planet's surface showed no massive weapon installations, no planetary shields, nothing that could threaten his armada. Perhaps they have allies, suggested Captain Thekmore from the communications station. Hidden fleets waiting to emerge. From hyperspace, our long-range sensors would detect any approaching vessels, Commander Vextar replied. The nearest inhabited systems are too far away to provide assistance before we could complete planetary bombardment. But what disturbed Admiral Corvin most wasn't the humans' confident ultimatum. It was what happened next on Earth's surface. His surveillance drones captured something unprecedented in 8 centuries of conquest, a species that simply refused to panic. Children walked to schools with their backpacks, laughing and playing, as if 3,000 alien warships weren't hanging over their heads like a sword. Workers boarded trains and buses, heading to offices and factories for another ordinary day. Traffic moved normally through city streets. Restaurants served lunch to customers who discussed mundane topics instead of their impending doom. This behavior is impossible, muttered Tactical Officer Zonka, watching the surveillance feeds. Every species shows signs of mass hysteria within hours of our arrival. Riots, evacuations, military mobilization, something. These humans are acting like we don't exist. Admiral Corvin had conquered civilizations that prided themselves on courage and discipline. Even they showed fear when faced with overwhelming odds. But these humans displayed something far more unsettling than bravery. They showed complete indifference to his presence. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbital defense stations, Captain Park Sun-woo of the First Fleet received an encrypted message that appeared on his personal terminal without triggering any security alerts. The communication came through channels that officially didn't exist, using encryption methods that shouldn't have been possible with current human technology. Phase 2 initiated. All assets in position. Maintain standard operations, read the message from Dr. Han Soo-hee. Captain Park Sun-woo deleted the message and continued his normal patrol duties, his expression never changing. Around him, his crew performed routine maintenance on their weapon systems, ran standard diagnostic checks, and maintained the same schedules they had followed for months. But subtle changes began occurring throughout Earth's military networks. Hidden subroutines activated in communication systems. Dormant protocols came online in defense satellites. Quantum computers buried in secure facilities started processing data streams from across the galaxy. In major cities around the world, people went about their daily lives with an almost supernatural calm. Teachers conducted normal classes, explaining fractions and historical dates to students who should have been terrified. Business meetings continued as scheduled, with executives discussing quarterly reports instead of alien invasion. Even news broadcasts maintained their regular programming, treating the massive alien fleet as just another story between weather reports and sports updates. The Zephyrian monitoring teams found this behavior more disturbing than any military preparation they had ever witnessed. Fear, they understood. Desperation made sense. Defiance was predictable, but this casual indifference to overwhelming force violated every pattern in their conquest database. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Lixara, "our psychological warfare broadcasts are having no effect. We've transmitted footage of our previous conquests, shown them the fate of worlds that resisted, demonstrated the power of our weapons. The humans acknowledge receiving our transmissions, then continue with their normal activities." Admiral Corvin watched a live feed of a human playground, where children played on swings and slides, while his massive flagship cast shadows over their school. Their laughter echoed through the surveillance audio, a sound that should have been impossible under the circumstances. "Perhaps they're in shock," suggested Commander Vexistar. "Some species experience collective psychological paralysis when faced with certain extinction." But Admiral Corvin had witnessed paralysis before, and this wasn't it. The humans weren't frozen with fear. They were waiting. The question that gnawed at him was what they could possibly be waiting for. In her alpine bunker, Dr. Han Soo-hee watched displays showing Zephyrian ship positions, communication intercepts, and status reports from assets across the galaxy. Her fingers moved across holographic interfaces, coordinating a plan that had been centuries in the making. "All pieces are in position," she whispered into her headset. "The trap is set. Now we wait for them to spring it." The 24-hour deadline passed with the precision of a cosmic clock. Admiral Corvin stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the chronometer reach zero. Still no surrender from the humans, no desperate last-minute negotiations, no signs of panic from the blue world below. "Deploy the demonstration force," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 8 centuries of successful conquests. 50 ships. Target their major population centers, but avoid total destruction. We want survivors to witness their helplessness." The selected warships broke formation with mechanical precision. Each vessel was a kilometer long, bristling with plasma cannons and missile arrays capable of leveling mountains. They had performed this exact maneuver on hundreds of worlds, and the sight of descending dreadnoughts had always shattered enemy morale within minutes. Captain Zekthar led the first assault wave, his ship's weapons charging as they entered Earth's upper atmosphere. Through his viewport, he could see the sprawling cities below, millions of humans going about their daily lives completely unaware that death was descending from the sky. "Weapons locked on primary targets," reported his tactical officer. Beginning descent to optimal firing altitude, the 50 ships entered Earth's atmosphere in perfect formation, their hulls glowing from atmospheric friction. They looked like falling stars, but stars that carried enough firepower to crack continents. Their target cities lay spread out below them like glittering jewels waiting to be crushed. Then, between one moment and the next, they simply ceased to exist. No brilliant explosions, no debris raining from the sky, no distress signals flooding the communication channels. 50 massive warships, each one a testament to Zephyrian military engineering, vanished as completely as if they had never existed at all. On the flagship's bridge, Admiral Corvin stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. The icons representing his assault force had simply disappeared from the screen. His sensor operators frantically recalibrated their equipment, convinced their instruments had malfunctioned. "Sir, we've lost all contact with the demonstration force," reported Communications Officer Lixara, her voice tight with confusion. "No distress signals, no weapon discharge readings, no energy signatures of any kind." Commander Vextar leaned over the sensor console, his scaled face twisted in bewilderment. "It's impossible. Ships that massive can't just vanish. Even if they were destroyed, we would detect the explosion signatures, debris clouds, something." Admiral Corvin's mind raced through possibilities. Hidden defensive weapons, some kind of cloaking technology that could mask complete destruction. But his sensors showed nothing. No energy discharges, no unusual readings from Earth's surface, no signs of any defensive system capable of eliminating 50 warships instantly. On lunar base, Commander Oh Tae-hyun sat calmly at his monitoring station, watching the Zephyrian fleet's growing panic through intercepted communications. His fingers moved across holographic displays that showed far more than any human technology should have been capable of detecting. "Second wave incoming," he reported through encrypted channels to command centers across Earth and beyond. "Admiral, Corvin is deploying 100 ships this time, larger vessels, heavier firepower." The second assault force launched from the alien fleet with desperate urgency. Admiral Corvin had committed his elite shock troops, massive battle cruisers that had personally overseen the destruction of entire star systems. If anything could break through whatever impossible defense the humans possessed, it would be these vessels. They entered Earth's atmosphere like avenging angels, their weapon systems fully charged and ready to unleash devastation on a scale that would end human civilization forever. Their captains were veterans of 1,000 battles, their crews hardened by centuries of conquest. They vanished exactly like the first wave. 100 ships, each one powerful enough to destroy a moon, simply stopped existing. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any explosion could have been. Dr. Kang Minji's voice echoed through Earth's hidden command networks from her post in the Seoul Crisis Center. "Follow-up transmission, ready for broadcast, initiating." Psychological Warfare Protocol 7. Ambassador Young Min-soo appeared once again on every Zephyrian communication channel throughout their fleet. His expression remained calm and professional, as if he were delivering a routine diplomatic message, rather than addressing an alien armada that had just lost 150 warships to impossible forces. "You now have 6 hours, he stated, simply. But this time, the 15-second transmission included something that made Admiral Corvin's blood freeze in his veins. Detailed technical specifications for every ship in his fleet scrolled across the screen, not just general-class information that might be obtained through long-range scanning, but specific serial numbers, individual crew records, tactical plans, that existed only in his most secure databases. The humans somehow knew that Captain Mordak of the cruiser Death's Edge had a weakness for imported liquor from the Vega system. They knew that Engineering Chief Kelnar on the Dreadnought Starcrusher had been disciplined 3 times for unauthorized modifications to weapon systems. They possessed tactical plans that Admiral Corvin had personally encrypted using quantum keys that changed every nanosecond. "How is this possible?" he whispered, staring at information that no species outside the Zephyrian Empire should have been able to access. The answer came to him with the slow, creeping horror of a nightmare becoming real. He pulled up his personal files, 847 detailed conquest reports spanning centuries of expansion across the galaxy. His hands shook as he searched for a pattern he had never noticed before. There it was, buried in the final transmissions from every conquered world. Kepler 442b had sent a desperate message about visitors from a blue world who knew our defense protocols. The Rigel colonies reported contact with beings from the third planet of a yellow star who predicted our attack patterns. Proxima Centauri. B's last communication mentioned mysterious entities who seemed to understand our enemies better than we understood ourselves. Every conquered world, every fallen civilization, every species that had been absorbed into the Zephyrian Empire had reported the same impossible thing in their final moments. Contact with beings from a small blue planet who knew too much, who understood too much, who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Admiral Corvin realized with growing terror that his fleet hadn't stumbled upon another conquest target. They had walked directly into a trap that had been 800 years in the making. The truth hit Admiral Corvin like a collapsing star. His fleet hadn't discovered Earth by chance. They had been guided here across centuries of conquest, following a path carefully laid out by an intelligence far more patient than any military mind in the galaxy. In her underground command center, beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Han Suhi stood before a massive holographic display that showed the entire galaxy in real time. Points of light flickered across star systems as her network of deep cover agents finally revealed themselves after decades of perfect camouflage. Each light represented a human operative who had been living among conquered populations, learning their languages, understanding their cultures, and preparing for this exact moment. "Initiate final phase," she spoke calmly into her headset. "All assets are green for liberation protocol." Across the galaxy, the impossible began to unfold. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, a simple factory worker named Kim Joo-hee shed her disguise and walked into the Zephyrian command center. The alien guards barely had time to register her presence before their weapons simply stopped functioning. Within minutes, the entire garrison found themselves sealed inside their own detention cells, while freed slaves cheered in the streets. On Proxima Centauri B, Merchant Park Hyejin revealed advanced technology hidden beneath her fruit stand, broadcasting liberation codes that simultaneously disabled every Zephyrian ship in orbit. The massive slave processing centers that had tormented millions of beings for decades went dark as their automated systems turned against their creators. Ambassador Young Minsu appeared one final time on every Zephyrian communication channel throughout the galaxy. This time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood representatives from hundreds of species, beings that the Empire thought had been completely subjugated or extinct. "Every species you conquered is now under our protection," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of Zephyrian space. "You have 1 hour to return all enslaved populations to their homeworlds and leave this galaxy permanently. Any ship remaining after that deadline will share the fate of your demonstration forces." The transmission showed impossible scenes playing out across conquered worlds, Zephyrian warships experiencing total system failures as their own computers turned against them, orbital weapons platforms targeting their creators instead of defending them, prison ships releasing their captives while trapping their guards. Admiral Corvin watched in horror as his communication officers reported identical scenarios from every system under Zephyrian control. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the entire fleet. Ships are experiencing cascading system failures. Engineering teams are being locked out of their own computers." Colonel Lee Jaihaye coordinated the massive liberation effort from her orbital station above Earth. Her screens showed 17 star systems simultaneously throwing off centuries of Zephyrian oppression. Each operation unfolded with clockwork precision, guided by agents who had spent lifetimes learning every weakness in the Empire's infrastructure. "Liberation Fleet Gamma reports successful freedom of the Rigel colonies," she announced. "Beta Team has secured the Vega mining stations. All slave populations are being evacuated to safe zones." The scope of the operation defied comprehension. Humans had been infiltrating conquered worlds for longer than most civilizations had possessed written language. They had learned every alien culture, mastered every technology, and gained the trust of every oppressed population. When the moment came, they didn't need to fight. They simply turned the Empire's own systems against itself. Commander Otai Hyun monitored the Zephyrian fleet's growing panic from lunar base. "Admiral Corvin's flagship is requesting emergency evacuation routes," he reported with something approaching amusement. "Their navigation systems are showing them paths that lead directly into black holes or neutron stars." The Zephyrian Empire's mighty war machine began collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries found themselves unable to fire their weapons, navigate through space, or even maintain life support without human permission. The thousands of slave laborers who had built their vessels revealed themselves as human agents, each one carrying override codes that turned every Zephyrian ship into a floating prison for its own crew. Admiral Corvin's tactical displays showed his empire crumbling in real time. Red warning lights flashed across every system as his commanders reported the same impossible scenario. Their own ships were betraying them, their weapons wouldn't fire, and their enslaved populations were walking free, while Zephyrian forces found themselves trapped and helpless. "How long?" he whispered to his aide. "How long have they been planning this?" The answer came from Dr. Han Suhi's final transmission to the fleeing Zephyrian fleet. "Humanity has been preparing for your arrival since before your empire existed. We didn't need faster-than-light travel because we had something more valuable: time and patience. Every world you conquered gave us more information about your methods, your technology, your weaknesses. You weren't building an empire. You were building the instrument of your own defeat." As the last Zephyrian vessel limped toward the Galactic Rim, their fleets reduced to powerless hulks, guided by human-controlled navigation systems, President Kim Do-yoon addressed the newly liberated galaxy. His words were broadcast to every inhabited world, translated into thousands of languages, and received by billions of beings tasting freedom for the first time in generations. "Welcome to the protection of the Terran Collective," he said warmly. "We've been waiting to meet you properly for a very long time. Today begins a new age of cooperation and peace among all species. The age of conquest is over." The most terrifying truth wasn't that humanity possessed weapons capable of destroying the Zephyrian Empire. It was that they had possessed the patience to let their enemies come to them, to learn everything about them, and to turn their own strength against them. The humans hadn't won through superior firepower. They had won through superior planning, and the kind of long-term thinking that spanned centuries. The end.